What is going on today, YouTube? I hope you guys are doing fantastic. We got some absolutely huge news. Today, we're going to talk about it along with all the SPL. We're going to summarize from the Masters tournament. We're also going to talk about this week's games and what I expect going forward. We'll also do a little power rankings just because the last one had some teams that I expected to play a little bit better, didn't play as good. And then we also have the new team entirely. So let's just jump right in. So as most of you have probably heard, ZAPMAN is officially joining the Highland Ravens in place of Barracuda. And this is the first Barracuda that we have not had in the SPL, I think, ever, which is kind of a surprise. Ever since SPL's been around, Bear's just kind of been competing, and he's always been like near the top. So it's kind of a shock when I ended up reading that it happened. I thought Zap would get on a team. I did not expect Bear to be the one dropped. But I mean, there's always an opportunity that Bear gets a shot somewhere else, especially with these Worlds phases. If a team comes in very slow and they still have a roster swap open, maybe they look to make their swap there. So looking at the teams, I just want to summarize kind of all the teams, what I expected from them and how they played in the group deciding tournament. What it ended up looking like was a Dragons Warriors finals. And the Warriors won in 5. The Dragons won the first 2 and then got reverse swept. Overall, very, very good. I think these final 4 teams are your clear 4 favorites. I think the Glads, the Ravens, the Kings, and the Hounds have a lot to improve on. I think the Ravens have the most upward trajectory. I think they played probably one of the tougher teams, and I also think that they are the only game that took a game off in these first set of games. So kind of crazy there. And now they made this roster change also, so that there's always chances that they can improve even more. Before we jump into the actual power rankings that I'm going to be doing in the summaries, this is what the divisions are going to be looking like. We have the Dragons, Levi's, Hounds, Ferrymen. Order division looks so strong. Chaos division is Warriors, Kings, Glads, Ravens. The beginning of last year, or the beginning of last phase, we expected our division to be the weaker division, and our division ended up being very, very strong. So there's always that chance again. Maybe the Order division had a very, very good first tournament, and now the rest of it, they're going to go fall back down to earth, and the Chaos division starts putting together a lot of success. The Gladiators, also kind of seen as the weakest team. A lot of hype around them. They're very, very confident. I love hearing that they're confident. Excited to see how they play in this first week. And then looking at the schedule, so it is 6 best of 5s. 4 teams will be playing once, and 4 teams will be playing twice. We have the Warriors playing twice, the Dragons playing twice, the Levi's playing twice, Ravens. Yeah, those are the teams that are playing. For those 4 teams, we'll only get 1 Glads game, 1 Hounds game, 1 Kings game, and 1 Ferryman game. Now, before we talk about predictions for that set, I want to talk about the rosters and what I saw from them and what my expectations are for them going into the entire rest of the phase and into the finals, or into the championship. Looking at the Levi's, this team was phenomenal. Panda Cat really was a difference maker for this team. You could tell they just had a lot more confidence. And Zap's not an unconfident player, but Panda just has like this other level of confidence. He really took it by storm, and I mean, Shinto played better, Adapting played better, Fine played better, Ronnie played better. His entire team just kind of got lifted up from his, I don't know, whatever it is, his confidence, whatever it was, they all looked a lot better. And I think they're going to be my dark horse going into the rest of this year. I think they can genuinely finish as the best team if they keep meshing together. But I do think that they so far have not looked as good as a couple other teams. And I'm going to keep them a little bit lower because of that. But I think they have a lot of potential. The Ferrymen, you didn't expect a great tournament from them. They're not a regular season type of team. They really seem to kick it on when it really matters. Paul's like the epitome of that. And then Baskin, Cyclone, Aurora, Sino are all just like that also. They played fine. Nothing stands out. They played an okay first set, and then they played a pretty bad second set. I think they are still going to be continuing to learn. They're not going to have a great phase IMO. I would expect them to actually be around the 4th, 5th place team. But when it really comes down to it, the end of the year, maybe they could fly up 2nd, 3rd. The Dragons, another team that looked phenomenal. Dardas on these funky mid picks. Also, I want to shout out Benny Q for a second too. When Benny pulls out those funky mid picks, I think it is a big difference because people look down on Benny for doing that because his team loses. I think if his team knew how to play around those picks as well as Dardas' team knows how to play around his funky picks, I think they would look a lot better. I really do think the Atlas mid is just as good as like an Athena mid. Stuff like that. I think just unfortunately, the Hounds never really meshed around it too well last year, and they haven't played it too much this year. I just want to shout out Benny because I really do think that if his team had the same amount of success, he wouldn't be looked down upon as this troll, like, weird mid-pick guy. He'd be kind of looked on as Dardas, where he just has a unique god pool. But speaking on the Dragons, phenomenal team. They all played very, very well. Realistically, they should have probably won the tournament. Other than game 5, I think they had an opportunity to win the first 4 games. And I think they kind of were the better team in game 1 and 2. Not to take it away from the Warriors. The Warriors were obviously the best team at the entire tournament because they won it, but the Jade Dragons looked very, very good also. Nika, Laz, Dardes, Vote, PBM, all of them looked phenomenal. I really think PBM going into that finals was the best player in the entire tournament. Shout out PBM, he played sick. Now onto the Hounds. The Hounds team looked worse than I thought they would look. A lot of what they were trying to do was sloppy. Their P's and B's weren't great. They were never really on the same page. They were missing a lot of abilities. Oath was kind of getting jungle gapped super hard, and we haven't seen Oath get jungle gapped that hard. It is the first tournament, so do with that as you will. But I think they looked really bad. Warriors, we touched on them a little bit, but by far the best team in the tournament. Genetics kind of made this team a smarter team just by joining. No longer is it just permafighting and hopefully you can out 5v5. When they fall behind, they actually have some semblance and some ability to get back into games with macro play instead of just trying to out team fight or out mechanic the enemy team. I do think he had some funky shot calls, and I think the Oni Warriors team, it definitely doesn't look perfect. I definitely think that this team is 100% winning this phase. I think there are some favorites. There's some badder. There's some worse teams, but I think the Warriors should be your favorite going into this entire phase. Next up, the Gilded Gladiators. Kind of like the Hounds, except I don't think they looked as bad as the Hounds. Realistically, if what I can take from that first tournament, I think the Glads look like a better team than the Hounds. I think they definitely didn't look great. They did lose 3-0. But they had some positives. I think Snoopy had a pretty bad set. I think Stu was fine. I think Jake was fine. Kirmi Kana were fine. But I've kind of had the gripe with Snoopy all year because I used to team with him at the beginning of this phase. I just think he just seems like he's a step behind a lot of the other mid laners. Nothing personal. I don't hate him. I just think that it's a pretty clear drop from like the top 7 mids to Snoopy. Going on to the Kings, Variety, Twig, BMT, Yarkor, and Quig. And another team that looked really, really sloppy and really, really poor going into this. And I don't think it was really Quig's fault. I think Twig had another bad game, bad set. I think Big Man was fine again. Variety was kind of just getting pounced on, and there was nothing he could really do because that's kind of what he wants to do. He wants to be the one that's focused by the enemy team. And then Yarkor played fine. This team just seems like they're just missing a piece. They just don't feel like a complete team anymore. And it's not even like Genetics was that piece either, because even with Genetics, they looked really bad. It just seems like that magic maybe that they had from last year is just kind of gone, and they don't look that great anymore. And then the Highland Ravens, Haddock, Scream, Venenu, ZAPMAN, Hurry. And this is the only team we have not seen with their updated roster. But boy, this is a team I'm very, very excited about. Haddocks, Scream have dominated solo side almost every single game. I think they're the most talented jungle solo in the entire SPL, except Panatom and Solo Troll when Solo Troll is not trolling. But Solo, has those peaks and those valleys where he's either the best player in the world or a middle of the pack player. But consistently, Haddocks and Scream are almost guaranteed winning every solo lane. And I think Venenu had a bad tournament, but he had a really good first phase and then another bad tournament in the end of the phase 1 tourney. I expect him to bounce back. I don't expect to see Venenu to play like that again. I think ZAPMAN will also instill some confidence into this team, same way Panda did for the Levi's. It's not even he is more confident than Barra. It's just a new feeling of confidence with this new player coming in that has won stuff before. So I think that'll help them a lot. And I think Hurry actually had a pretty good phase all around. I don't think he was standout or anything, but I think he played pretty well for a support and pretty well for somebody that's kind of still getting new to the role or getting used to the role. But looking at the rosters, I think I'm pretty confident with where I want to rank the teams going into it. I think my bottom 2 teams are the Hounds and the Glads. And realistically, I think the Glads have a higher ceiling than the Hounds. I think this Hounds team just looks all out of whack. Like they relied on Quig for a lot of things and the rest of the players aren't really following along anymore. They don't ever really seem to be on the same page. I think their drafts were the worst drafts at the tournament. And the Glads on the other side, I think they had a few positives. I think they're a very sloppy team still. They fight very bad around objectives. They're a funky team in terms of how they want to play because they don't really have a direction a lot of the times. But I think that their top end, if they can get used to each other and they can play a little bit more consistently, I think they have a better chance of going higher than the Hounds. And I was actually really debating putting the Kings below the Gladiators. I think this Kings team just looks out of it. I mean, they have a lot of talent. I think Big Man, Yarkor are probably the best, maybe unfair to say they're the best backliners when Paul and Cyclone just won, but I would say, in my opinion, I think Big Man and Yorkor are the best backliners in the entire league. Unfortunately, I think Variety, Quig, and Twig did not look good in the tournament. They didn't look good with Genetics either. And I think they've been one of the worst frontliners all year, or the worst frontline group the entire year. And it didn't change at the tournament. But I do think that Big Man and Yarkor, I'm confident enough in them that they can just kind of put the team on their back and win a couple games. I'm going to put the Ferryman in 5th for the phase. I think this team will try to coast into the actual championship week and championship tournament. I don't think they care too much about actually winning this until the tournament actually happens. They'll just kind of play. They'll try their picks. Some of them will work, some of them won't. And then when it gets down to it, they'll lock in the same 2-3 gods. You'll have to ban out one person, and then they still have a 4th god available that they're still sick on, and they'll dominate, and they'll look very, very good. But for now, I'm going to put the Ben 5th. I think they'll be a little slumpy coming out of this tournament. 4th, we're going to put the Ravens. Again, this is the only team we haven't seen yet. So there's the option that ZAPMAN does not fix this team's problems, and they actually look worse than they did with Barra, because I think with Barra, they had consistency, and I think ZAPMAN is not the most consistent player. I think he has bad games, for sure, but I also think he has very good games. Kind of just comes down to what is going to happen. Are we going to get a ZAPMAN that is consistent? Are we going to get a Ravens team that is consistent? Or are we going to get a team that doesn't really mesh all that well together and doesn't look good? For 3rd place, we'll put the Levi's, and this is just a power rankings. This is how I have the teams stacked up against each other going into the rest of this year. I really think this Levi's team, I really think that they can be the best team the entire year. I think they can win the championship this year, win Worlds. I do think that they have a little bit more of a mountain to climb than, say, the Ferryman, but I'm putting them above the Ferryman because I think that they have a lot more to prove for this phase, and I think they're going to be trying a lot harder, and they're going to be trying to get 2-3 gods in every role and have worked those the entire year, and I think that's going to benefit them. But will it come back to bite them when the meta changes maybe and they don't have as many picks, or they just have something that doesn't work anymore, whatever it is? But we will put them in 3rd. And then number 2 and number 1, the Warriors won the entire first phase with Jake. They ended up losing the tournament to the Ferryman in a 3-0 fashion, but in my opinion, they've still been the best team all year. The Ferryman got hot at a good time. I also think they knew the meta really well, and I think that they just played a really good style of Smite. I think Aurora was on top with Ganesh, and I don't think Jake has as good of a Ganesh, and I don't think the team played around Ganesh as the Ferryman did with Aurora, and I just think that they have to be your number 1 team going into this phase. If you wanted to put the Dragons ahead of them because what you saw from the tournament, I wouldn't hate it. But I'm going to put the Dragons at 2. Realistically, I think a lot of it comes down to their front line. I think Mike and Nika need to be the best player in their role for this team to win. I think Dardas, Vote, and Lasbra are all going to be pretty consistent players. They're going to hit their abilities. They're going to be smart. But I think it's around Mike and Nika to be the ones that put this team on their back and to be the one that carries them to that first place and to Worlds. And that's my power rankings. We'll take a quick look at these games and we'll talk about them quick. Just my predictions for them. Warriors, Ravens. Very crazy. We get to see the first set is going to be ZAPMAN on the Ravens versus the Warriors. It's a hard first set to take. I'm going to say 3-1 Warriors. I think the Warriors are just going to be the best team in the league at this phase, and I think they'll win. I think this will be a very good game for the Warriors. Dragons and Levi's. I do think this could be a trap game for the Dragons where they don't come in as hot and the Levi's can take it, but I'll say 3-2 Dragons. I think they've proved enough that they should be able to be the favorites for this game. Warriors and Eldritch Hounds. I'm going to say clean 3-0. Realistically, I don't think the Hounds can get a game, even if the Warriors are trolling. I think this is just kind of majors versus minors as of now. Gladiators versus Dragons. Kind of the same thing. I think the Gladiators could take a game off like the Kings, maybe the Ferryman, but I think the Dragons play good enough Smite that this should be a clean 3-0. Again, majors versus minors. Ravens versus Kings could be a bit of a worrisome game for the Ravens, but they should get the rust out. They should be able to get themselves together against that Warriors team. The worst thing to start off with when you make a roster change is to start off 0-2, so this is a pretty important game, but it's not the worst team to play against. The Kings haven't looked very good, and I think the Ravens can exploit that. I'll even say 3-0. I'm pretty confident in the Ravens. And then lastly, Levi's Ferryman. I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to say this is a 3-0. I think the Levi's are going to win this 3-0. I think this will be a bit of a stomp. This is the Ferryman's first game, and it's a Sunday afternoon game. I could easily see them going into this a little lackadaisical and just getting blown out by the Levi's. And that's what I'm going to say. But yeah, there it is. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I love talking SPL. If you guys enjoy me talking about the SPL, you know, leave likes, comments. What are your guys' thoughts on the teams? Do you have a favorite going into this year? Also, what do you think about the ZAPMAN Barra trade-off? Crazy. I'm excited to see how the Ravens play with this change. And I'm really excited to see good Smite. The games will be starting in 1 hour. This should have been posted at 10. This is a 15-minute video, so it'll be about 45 minutes till the games actually start. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Go watch some SPL, baby. See ya.